Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we'll be discussing our first case study. Case study is on AEC business and the case study follows as: AIDS engineering company AEC operates in the secondary sector. It uses the 4 factors of production to make parts of cars and trucks. These goods are sold to car and truck manufacturers in many countries. The parts include metal brake components and rubber seals to fit around windows. To be successful, AEC requires raw materials supplied by other businesses to make car parts. Define goods. Outline 2 examples of tertiary sector businesses AEC is likely to use. Explain 2 reasons why it might be important for AEC to increase added value. Explain 2 ways AEC could increase added value. Which way should it choose, and justify your answer. The first question talks about define goods. The moment you hear the word goods, always know they're talking about tangible products, products that we can touch. For example, this mic is a good. So basically, goods are tangible products made by businesses which eventually are going to be sold to the customers. So all the examples that come under goods could be your cell phones, it could be laptops, food, clothing, shelter. All of them, they come under the category of goods. Define goods. Goods are tangible products made by businesses to be sold to customers, such as cars and clothes. So before I move on to the second question, I would like to educate you all about the types of economic sectors, because the second question is all about the tertiary sector. So there are 3 types of economic sectors: primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector of the industry. First, what does the primary sector do? The primary sector, it extracts the natural resources from the earth and it uses these natural resources to produce raw materials. And these raw materials are later on, they are given to other businesses. Now, you have businesses that operate in this particular sector, in this particular primary sector, could be something like farming, forestry, mining, extraction of natural resources from the earth, especially of crude oil and copper ore, etc. Now let's talk about the second one, that is the secondary sector of the industry. Now the secondary sector of the industry, it actually takes the raw materials which have been given by the primary sector of the industry and it converts them into manufactured or processed goods. And these are later on sold to the customers or other businesses. But now it just converts them into the manufactured goods. So what are the different types of businesses that come under this sector? Basically, all manufacturing businesses come under this particular secondary sector of the industry. For example, building and construction, manufacturing of cars, your aircrafts, mobile phones, even baking bread, even that comes under the secondary sector. However, there's one very interesting thing. You've seen certain industries in which they collect the raw materials from various sources. For example, let's take a mobile phone. It collects the various parts of the mobile phone from various sources and it assembles it into a mobile phone. Now, even such manufacturing units where they just assemble the parts also come under the secondary sector. Now let's talk about the last, the tertiary sector. Now this tertiary sector is basically, it provides these goods and services to the customers, either to the customers or either to the businesses at large. Now what does this happen is, if I've told you that the secondary sector is all about manufacturing businesses, the tertiary sector is all about service providers. So the ones that you actually see, your hospitality industry, the hotels, entertainment industry, finances, banking, retail, all of them come under the tertiary sector of the industry. Now let's move to the second question. The second question emphasizes on the tertiary sector businesses AEC is likely to use. Now when you read this question, there is a certain way that I want you to approach this question. Think as though you are the AEC business. Now you've manufactured your car parts and your truck parts. Inventory is ready. What's the first step that you need? You need to store your inventory. So AEC is likely to use the services of warehouse companies in order to store its inventory carefully. That's the first one. Second, an order has been placed and AEC now has to dispatch its order. So AEC is likely to use the services of transport companies to dispatch its order from its manufacturing unit to the customer's address. Third point, now you've received your order and AEC is now dispatched the order. Now what is it that AEC business, that is you, has to do? You need to track your order. So for that, you would have to take the services of IT and communication services. So AEC is likely to associate itself with IT and communication services to track its order and also communicate regularly to the customer exactly where the order is and how long would it take to reach the customer's destination. Now, fourth point. What's the first thing that AEC is likely to do? You are likely to do if you're sending your order from your source to the destination. You're going to insure your inventory. In case of any mishap en route, you need to make sure that your inventory is safe. So you would likely associate yourself with insurance companies and insure the machinery. So these are the 4 tertiary businesses AEC business would likely to associate itself. First, as I spoke about, warehouse services. Second, we speak about the transport services. Third, we spoke about the IT and communication services. And fourth, we spoke about the insurance services. Now in the question, they've only asked you to give 2 examples, but I've given you 4 for a better understanding. Outline 2 examples of tertiary sector businesses AEC is likely to use. Warehousing services. AEC is likely to use warehouse services to safely store its inventory, car and truck parts after manufacturing before they are shipped to the customers. Transport services. AEC is likely to use the services of the transport companies to transport its inventory to the various manufacturers across different countries. IT and communication services. AEC is likely to use the IT and communication services to track its inventory and communicate the status of the order to its customers regularly. Insurance services. AEC is likely to use the services of the insurance companies to insure its inventory in case of any mishap that happens en route, such as theft or accidents. Alright, the third question, it states, why is it important for AEC business to increase its added value? Now before I get into the answer, let me explain the concept of added value. Now I'm going to explain this concept with an example. Let's say that you have built a house. The selling price of this house is $200,000 and the cost of all the raw materials and the resources that are required in order to build the house that have been bought in is around $50,000. Now the difference between the selling price of the house as well as the cost of the raw materials that have been bought in, now is basically your added value. So for example, let's say that means $200,000 minus $50,000, that is $150,000. So this $150,000 is your added value. So basically what I'm trying to say, I'm going to repeat it one more time. Selling price of the product and the cost of raw materials and the resources that have been bought in, the difference between these two equals to your added value. Now, so you must be thinking that this $150,000 is all profit, isn't it? Absolutely not. Every business has so many other costs. It just does not have the cost of raw materials itself. For example, in this particular example that I've given you of the house, the businesses should also be paying up wages to its laborers. It would have management costs. It could have costs for advertising the house. It could also be having costs for electricity that's required to build the house. So all of these costs also have to be paid up. So now this particular $150 is first utilized. This particular $150,000 is first particularly utilized to pay up these costs. Now once these costs are all done up, The remaining amount that is remaining with the business is then considered to be profit. So what happens if it's high added value, or if you increase the added value, you're basically increasing your profit margin. And profit is absolutely essential. Why? Because it not only allows the business to survive, but to grow as well as succeed. So this is the concept of added value, and this is why you have to increase added value. Now what are they saying? Why should AEC increase its added value? Let's think. High added value. That means it's going to generate high profits to AEC. Certain amount of these profits can actually be utilized to reward its employees, and this would actually improve the functionality of the company. How? Let me talk to you. AEC could use a certain level of these profits in order to increase the salary of its employees, especially the highly skilled employees. Now, since AEC deals in the manufacturing department, you need to understand that this particular industry is highly competitive. So when highly skilled employees receive better salaries, they would stick to the company. They wouldn't leave AEC. That means this reduces the employee turnover. And also, what happens when you reduce the employee turnover? It would increase the productivity of AEC itself. So that is one point. Now let's talk about the second way. What would be the second way? High added value, or increase in the added value, which means that higher profit margins. Now whenever a business is making high profit margin, that means the business has a certain amount of cushion with it. So one thing that we all know in businesses is the cost of raw materials. It could be balanced, or it could sometimes skyrocket. Now let's say steel prices, which could be like the primary raw material that is required while making your car parts or your truck parts. Now when the prices of steel hit the roof, AEC, since it has a high added value, it has enough amount of cushion in order to easily absorb the high steel prices. Now why is this an advantage? During such conditions, it is that when most of the businesses, they might actually shut down. Why do they shut down? Because of insufficiency of funds. But this cushion, it actually protects the survival of AEC even in such difficult conditions. And that is why it is very, very important for AEC to increase its added value. Explain two reasons why it might be important for AEC to increase added value. Better salaries. By increasing added value, businesses can generate higher profits and be able to pay better salaries to its employees. With increased added value, AEC can offer better salaries to its highly skilled employees. This would ensure retainment of the skilled employees in competitive markets too, leading to reduction in employee turnover and improvement in the productivity of AEC. Protection against rising cost of raw materials. Higher added value leads to providing a cushion to the business, which would be especially useful against rising costs of raw materials. If the primary raw material, steel prices, suddenly hit the roof, AEC would still be able to absorb the high cost of steel easily. This leads to protecting AEC's survival in difficult times too, as many of the businesses might shut down due to insufficient funds. Now the fourth question actually talks about how AEC can increase its added value. Now any business, it can increase its added value in two ways. First, it can either charge a higher price for its products, or it either can reduce the cost of its raw materials. Now again, how can any business charge a higher price for its product? Again, there are four ways in doing so. First, you add new features to your products. Second, improve customer service. Third, improve your packaging. And fourth, the business should build a strong and an effective brand image. Now, when it comes to how it can increase its added value by reducing the cost of raw materials, again, there are two ways to do this. First, you either use a low-cost supplier and you buy your supplies from him, or you do bulk buying of your supplies. Now what happens when you're doing a bulk buying? You would receive bulk discounts from the suppliers, and this would eventually reduce the cost per unit. All right. Okay, now let's apply this to the AEC case. How can AEC increase its added value? There are two ways AEC can increase its added value. First, improve the product quality, and second, reduce the cost of its raw materials. First, now high product quality will always win the trust of the customers, and this will always allow businesses to charge a higher price for their products. So AEC, it actually manufactures metal brake components. If it could make its metal brake components even more reliable, more durable, much more stronger and safer, then what happens is this could win the trust of the manufacturers, and the manufacturers would actually pay a higher price for these key components of such high quality. And this gives a chance to AEC to increase its added value and to generate higher profits. Second way, reducing the cost of raw materials. Businesses can also increase their added value by reducing the cost of raw materials. If AEC buys its primary raw materials such as steel or aluminum in bulk, it would actually get bulk discount from its suppliers. Now, because of this bulk discount, AEC would reduce the cost per unit. So with each sale of every car part or every truck part, AEC is able to actually make a greater profit margin, and this increases the added value. Now we have to conclude. They say, which way should AEC choose, and justify your answer. Now we have to always give a very strong conclusion. So this is how I would recommend to the students. AEC should choose improving the product quality over reducing the cost of raw materials. Though initially AEC could reduce its cost by reducing the cost of raw materials, this approach would not ensure any kind of orders or repeat orders or any kind of long-term agreements to AEC. So this does not ensure long-term profitability. However, if AEC is able to make its products of the highest quality in the car and truck industries, safety as well as reliability are of top priority. So this approach would win the trust of the manufacturers, and this would earn AEC orders, repeat orders and long-term contracts, securing long-term profitability. So as a result, the best way for AEC to increase its added value is to improve the product quality. Explain two ways AEC could increase added value. Which way should it choose? Justify your answer. Improve the quality of the product. High quality products earn the trust of the customers and allows businesses to charge a higher price. For car and truck manufacturers, safety and reliability are top priority. AEC could make high quality brake systems that are stronger, safer, more durable and more reliable. This would lead to manufacturers willing to pay a higher price for such high performing key components. This way, AEC can increase its added value and earn higher profits. Reduce the cost of raw materials. Businesses can increase their added value by reducing the cost of raw materials. AEC could buy its primary raw materials such as steel or aluminum in bulk and avail bulk discounts from suppliers. This would result in reduction in cost per unit, and with each sale, AEC would be able to make greater profits through increased added value. Conclusion. AEC should choose to improve the product quality over reducing its cost to increase added value. Though bulk buying results in cost reduction, it wouldn't help in obtaining orders and maintain long-term profitability. However, by ensuring the products are of high quality, AEC would win over the manufacturer's trust and earn orders, repeat orders and secure long-term contracts too. So for AEC, increasing added value through quality improvement is the key to grow and succeed. Hi, I'm Deepti. There's one question that all of you must be thinking. There's so many channels out there, why should I follow her channel? I'm going to teach you business studies exactly the way it has to be taught according to me. Every single video emphasizes on case studies, and through case studies you would know exactly what business studies is all about. So you not only know the content inside out, but you also know exactly what to write in your case studies. So if you would like my approach, follow my channel. Hit subscribe and come, let's learn together.